Who can remember the olden days when bikes just kept getting faster and faster? The 80s and 90s were an exciting time in the world of motorcycles, with all the manufacturers competing to have the best, the sportiest, or the outright fastest motorcycles in their showrooms. And then something happened that changed everything. Throughout the 80s, bikes were getting better and better and starting to look a little bit like the kind of thing we would call a contemporary sport bike today. But it was the early 90s when things started hotting up, and the motorcycle world became obsessed with speed. In 1990, Kawasaki released the ZZR 1100, also known as the Ninja ZX-11. With its 1052cc engine making 145 horsepower, the ZX-11 was capable of 283 kilometers per hour. It was indeed the fastest production motorcycle in the world. And it took quite a few years for the big Kawasaki to be dethroned. It wasn't until 1996 that Honda released the CBR 1100XX Super Blackbird with the sole intention of becoming the world's fastest production bike. They went so far as to name it after the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest ever jet engine aircraft. The Blackbird had a bigger engine than the Ninja ZX-11, as well as more power, and crucially was capable of the slightly higher top speed of 287 kilometers per hour. But you know who was feeling left out? Suzuki. And then, everybody knows what happened next. Suzuki released the GSX 1300R Hayabusa in 1999. Now where Honda was a bit cheeky by calling their bike the Super Blackbird, Suzuki took that further and threw the name Hayabusa in Honda's face. Hayabusa is Japanese for peregrine falcon, the fastest bird on the planet, who even eats blackbirds. With a name like Hayabusa, Suzuki had to deliver, which they did. The Busa had at the time the largest displacement engine ever in a sports bike. That big old donk, combined with unique aerodynamics, blew the Blackbird away. It was allegedly capable of 312 kilometers per hour, absolutely annihilating anything that came before it in the top speed stakes. And then enter Kawasaki, who was known as the big speed guy for years, and they wanted back in. Production began on the ZX-12R with a clear goal to dethrone the Hayabusa. Early talk and rumors said the bike would break the 200+ miles per hour barrier. Whilst it was exciting for a lot of people, it was scaring others. There were fears that bikes getting faster and faster would cause carnage on the streets, and everyone would start street racing at the full potential of these death machines. So regulators and governments, particularly in Europe, took this seriously. They started to talk about introducing a ban on high-speed motorcycles. And here, my friends, is where the gentleman's agreement began. So before the sports bikes with big power figures started getting banned by various governments, the manufacturers decided they probably needed to do some self-policing. They realized that they had to pull the brake before the government would take action. Then somewhere a meeting took place and it was agreed, completely unofficially, that all the main manufacturers would limit their bikes to 300 kilometers per hour. The intention was that it would put a stop to motorcycle performance figures getting sillier and sillier. So when the Kawasaki ZX-12R did come out in 2000, all it would do was 300 kilometers per hour. That's despite being capable, on paper at least, of considerably more. Similarly, the 2000 model of Suzuki Hayabusa stopped speeding up at 186 miles per hour, unlike its previous year model, all of which confirmed the gentleman's agreement was indeed in action. Ironically, however, the first motorcycle to break this pact hailed from the same continent that suggested it in the first place. In 2007, Italian manufacturer MV Agusta revealed their weapon, the new F4R 312. And that was a statement because the 312 stands for the top speed. Next in line was yet another European manufacturer, and also the one which suggested the agreement. That bike is of course the BMW S1000RR, which maxed out at 303 kilometers per hour. Ducati followed soon afterward with their Panigale R. While a track-only model, the bike's speedometer goes blank past 186 miles per hour and has been recorded at 325 kilometers per hour. So the Europeans don't care anymore. But the Japanese, namely Kawasaki, aren't quite done yet either. In a big fuck you to everyone, in 2015 Kawasaki released the H2R, a supercharged monster putting out 310 horsepower. Kawasaki supplied racer Kenan Sofoglu with an H2R, and they hit an indicated 400 kilometers per hour. Just to keep things civil, Kawasaki released a detuned street-legal H2 that is speed limited to 300 kilometers per hour. So over 30 years later, the gentleman's agreement lives on. Most leader sports bikes are still electronically limited, but the speed war still lives on. Just look at the Kawasaki H2R.